Christian, you brought up a good, an interesting point.
May not be a good point.
Yeah. I'm agnostic in that sense. So you're, you do have this Medtech background where, even to get out of the gate, really, like, you have to have some sort of protection of whatever it is that you're working on, right? Or
right.
Just to secure some funding or to really get going, at least have a solid plan, right? For protecting it if you don't have some. And then kind of entering into a bit of a new realm, somewhat still in the same, working with, developing chips, but for a new application and working with this new shift that we, with a new technology that we're working with and seeing everywhere. And then you brought up this point about kind of the divide of thought processes and how people think about this. So as you've made that shift from being in the medtech community to shifting towards the crypto community, has that, what are the sort of considerations that you're thinking about? Because I know quite a bit about what it is that you're doing, but I know that you rely on open source is a really important part of all this too. So what has that shift been like?
Yeah, well, so I think another interesting shift that's happening right now is so we build one of the core components in what Drayton does is essentially a secure root of trust built into silicon. We can build it into other things. For things like the recent foreshadow attack on Intel's secure or software guard extensions, Spectre meltdown, all of the attacks on the processors that we all use every day, there was a big movement within academia, at least, to say, why don't arguably one of the reasons why those attacks were successful is that Intel was very opaque about how they architected their processors, and this is relevant in a second. If you look at the groups, actually there's a group here at TCell that led some of the work on understanding the likely vulnerabilities of those core processors. And the way that they did that is that the lead graduate student read all of Intel's patents, and he formulated a hypothesis of how this processor was working, and they'd send their idea to. They would solicit information as to whether or not this was accurate and iterate through, and they got to a point where it seemed like their theory was close to how this thing worked. Published this is probably a bad idea. We should probably improve this architecture, and all this led to this idea that, hey, if this stuff had just been open source from the beginning, or at least published cleanly, so it was auditable, then these kinds of attacks wouldn't happen. And sort of similar to the point of, with open source, one of the benefits is that you get a lot of people checking for vulnerabilities and looking for and helping to improve a core code base. So, so I think that there's, both in the hardware side and the software side, there is an interest. Hardware side is there's becoming an interest and a desire to see open source hardware, which traditionally was not a thing. Practically speaking, there are really big challenges in making true open source hardware. But I think that the middle ground that we've taken, seeing the benefits of both sides, it's frankly beneficial to not expose exactly how we architect something, both from protection perspectives in terms of being copied by competitors who are much larger than us, also in terms of security by obscurity, though that's controversial, is that we will at the very least publish our architecture so that they're fully auditable, and so I think there's a very interesting middle ground here where, and this gets back to the point I meant earlier in terms of when people push for open source within the blockchain community, I think what they really mean is auditable and traceable. And if you have something where we create a new architectural standard for something and there's a reasonable and non-discriminatory licensing model around it that supports an industry existing, like that may be an interesting middle ground versus just we're going to be the next Intel or AMD.
To that point, I think it's worth noting that openness and transparency and publishing, at least making your code, if you will, whether it's hardware or software, publicly available, is not mutually exclusive with a patent strategy, because the fundamental thing that patents are supposed to do, the deal that they're supposed to make, is that you're telling everybody how you implement things, at least to some extent. And in exchange, you get a monopoly on the idea. You release your ideas to the world. It was kind of the open source of its day.
Yeah.
You release your ideas to the world.
Interesting
You
way to
receive
think
a
about
form of protection in return. And as a result, innovation can go forward. The problem is that no matter what system you come up with to protect people's property and to release information, people are going to find ways to exploit it to their benefit. That has happened with patents many times. It's happened with open source. It's a common phenomenon for companies to take open source concepts that are developed in a little garden that they curate, and then mine it for applications and innovations sort of budding off of that, and then basically try to corner the market on the valuable aspects, the fruit of the garden, if you will. So coercion, property you could think of as information plus coercion. And coercion can come in many forms, even in the form of viral network dominance.
Well, so the blockchain space, I think, is at this, it's sort of like this vulnerable child right now, I think, because people are coming in saying, I have no idea how patents work. I hear they're bad, and we don't patent things. And so we're going to open source everything. And oh look, the big scary guys who used to come in with their patent litigation groups are now creating these open source consortiums, and everything is good. What's probably actually going to happen there is exactly what Micah just articulated, which is if you create a consortium, make everything open and free, and mine that for the best possible stuff and patent it. I just think that there's this there's a naivete that may face a bit of a reckoning.
The big scary guys are always going to be big and scary. That's
we're not worried, but
oh well, you're scary too.